This guy was paying champagne.
In November 1977, the Yokota family had only recently settled into their new life in Niigata, Japan. The father, Shigeru, had just been transferred from Hiroshima as part of his job with the Bank of Japan. Although the family had grown accustomed to moving often, Niigata felt different. It lacked the warmth of their previous homes, and something about it felt cold, even a little ominous. Still, life went on. Their 13-year-old daughter Megumi had just begun attending junior high school, and she was slowly finding her rhythm in the new city. Then came November 15th, a day that would fracture their world forever. Megumi had just finished school and headed to badminton practice. Her mother, Saki, had noticed that Megumi wasn't her usual cheerful self that morning. She seemed tense, distant. When practice ended, the coach and Megumi's friends said goodbye to her as she turned toward her usual route home, but she never made it back. When Saki realized Megumi hadn't returned by evening, she immediately sensed something was wrong. She began calling her name down the nearby streets and parks. Megumi wasn't the kind of girl to wander off or lose track of time. As the hours stretched into the night, panic set in. The family contacted the police, and a search was launched. Investigators discovered that Megumi's school bag and gym clothes were found neatly folded on a path through a small pine forest along the seaside road she usually walked. But of Megumi herself, there was no trace. Weeks turned into months, and, despite a massive investigation involving 300 officers and searchers, no meaningful clues ever emerged. Initially, the police suspected a possible suicide, perhaps linked to school bullying, but there was never any evidence to support that theory. Megumi had recently spoken excitedly about her future dreams. She wanted to study law at university. She had even told her mother that she was starting to like the new school, that she'd made some friends. None of it made sense. Years passed. The Yokota family refused to give up hope. They did everything they could to keep the search alive, hanging posters, speaking to the media, keeping Megumi's name in the public eye. Every night, they left the porch light on and the front door unlocked, clinging to the faintest hope that Megumi might walk through it once more. By 1985, 8 years after her disappearance, the family still had no answers. But then, something strange happened. While visiting a Buddhist temple in Niigata, Saki noticed a woman praying nearby. She looked eerily familiar, about 25 to 27 years old, Japanese, with a presence that tugged at Saki's heart. The woman seemed nervous. She left abruptly, getting into a car that immediately drove off. Saki rushed to the parking lot, but the car was already gone. She was so shaken by the encounter that she collapsed on the temple steps. Something inside her whispered that she had just seen her daughter. Despite this, the investigation remained cold. The Japanese public and authorities had largely moved, and few people still remembered Megumi's name, until a tragedy halfway across the world would breathe new life into the mystery. On November 29, 1987, Korean Air Flight 858 exploded in mid-air en route to Seoul, killing all 115 passengers and crew. Investigators soon identified 2 suspects responsible for placing the bomb on board. One of them, a woman named Kim Hyun-hui, was captured and interrogated by South Korean intelligence. During questioning, she revealed something astonishing. Kim said that during her training in North Korea, she had been taught Japanese by a woman who had been abducted from Japan as a teenager. The woman was named Megumi Yokota. The revelation was explosive. At first, few believed it. But then, in 1997, 5 North Korean defectors arrived in South Korea. All 5 independently confirmed that a Japanese woman named Megumi Yokota had been kidnapped by North Korean agents in the late 1970s and forced to teach Japanese to North Korean spies. This was the moment everything changed. Megumi's story was now part of something much larger, the North Korean abduction program. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, North Korea had secretly abducted at least 17 Japanese citizens, teenagers, young adults, couples, dragging them from beaches, streets, and villages to use as language instructors, cultural informants, or even identity templates for espionage missions. Shigeru and Saki, now thrust into the spotlight, began a relentless campaign to uncover the truth, not just for Megumi, but for all the families whose loved ones had vanished under similarly mysterious circumstances. The issue gained momentum. The Japanese public began demanding answers. And in 2002, under growing pressure, Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi made a historic visit to Pyongyang. There, in a private meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, Koizumi was presented with a stunning confession. Kim admitted that North Korean agents had indeed kidnapped 13 Japanese citizens, 5 of whom were still alive. Megumi was not among them. North Korea claimed that Megumi had died by suicide in 1994, after years of depression and confinement. They handed over what they said were her cremated remains. But Japanese forensic analysis cast doubt on the claim. DNA testing suggested the remains weren't Megumi's at all. The handwriting samples North Korea provided also didn't match Megumi's known writing style. The case, once again, was mired in deception and heartbreak. Still, the Yokotas never gave up. They became a symbol of strength and perseverance for a nation. In 2007, Megumi's father, Shigeru, published a book of poems he had written for his daughter, filled with longing, sorrow, and hope. In 2020, after decades of fighting for the truth, Shigeru passed away at the age of 87, without ever seeing his daughter again. Today, Saki continues the fight, now in her 80s. Megumi would be in her 60s if she's still alive. Her disappearance, and the painful mystery surrounding it, remains one of Japan's most haunting unresolved tragedies. It's a chilling reminder of how one quiet evening on a seaside path became entangled in a vast web of international espionage, propaganda, and silence. North Korea officially claimed that Megumi Yokota had taken her own life in 1994, about 17 years after she was kidnapped. According to the regime, she had suffered from depression and mental illness, and life in Pyongyang had become too much for her to bear. They presented this narrative to Japan as final and unchangeable. To support their story, they handed over a small container of what they said were her cremated remains, along with personal belongings and letters that were supposedly written by her before her death. However, these claims raised immediate suspicion. The handwriting in the letters did not match samples of Megumi's writing from before her abduction. Her childhood diaries and school notes had a completely different writing style. Japanese authorities quickly became doubtful. More importantly, when the ashes were examined by independent forensic experts in Japan, the DNA analysis revealed something even more alarming. The remains were not only inconsistent with Megumi's DNA, they contained fragments from multiple individuals. Some of the bone pieces were clearly from people who had been significantly older than Megumi would have been at the time of her alleged death. The evidence strongly suggested that North Korea had provided fake remains. This raised a fundamental question. If Megumi had truly died by suicide, why forge the evidence? Why go to the trouble of faking ashes, forging handwriting, and presenting an inconsistent story? The answer lies in Megumi's value to the regime. She was not treated like an ordinary captive. After being kidnapped, Megumi had been forced to teach the Japanese language and culture to North Korean operatives who were being trained as international spies. Her role was to make these agents fluent in native Japanese speech patterns, idioms, gestures, and behaviors, so they could convincingly pass as Japanese citizens while on foreign missions. This made Megumi an incredibly valuable asset to the North Korean government. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was part of their covert intelligence infrastructure. Releasing her, or admitting that she was still alive, would have posed a major risk. She could reveal critical details about how North Korea trained its spies, what kind of missions they planned, and the inner workings of their clandestine operations. From Pyongyang's perspective, it was far safer to claim she was dead. Their story did not hold up under scrutiny. Beyond the forensic inconsistencies, there were reports from defectors who claimed they had seen Megumi alive after 1994. Some said she had been moved under a different identity. Others suggested she continued working in secret facilities where Japanese language training was carried out. These testimonies further undermined North Korea's official version of events. If these reports are accurate, Megumi may still be alive somewhere in North Korea, hidden away, living under strict control, and unable to communicate with the outside. The false suicide story appears to have been a calculated attempt by the regime to close the case and avoid accountability. But the deception only deepened the mystery and strengthened the belief that Megumi was more than just a victim. She was a key piece in a far-reaching intelligence operation, and perhaps still is.